So our next speaker is the Ladva, founder and CEO of Live and Lead. And she's going to be talking about breaking the fraud feeling, overcoming imposter syndrome, and stepping into your authentic self. She has over 15 years of experience in coaching, training, and well-being. And Dee is also very committed to supporting women in overcoming challenges and stepping into leadership roles with confidence. And I think a lot of you will find this very useful for your careers. I've been talking to some of you during the break, and some of these issues have come up. So I hope that you can take a lot from today's from Dee's talk. So please let me welcome Dee.
Thank you. Thank you. I think the mic's working. You'll hear me. So what a wonderful morning so far, and it's great to have spoken to some of you and be here with you for the next 45 minutes to talk about imposter syndrome and what that is and what that looks like. So I'm founder and CEO of Live and Lead, which is a training, coaching and wellbeing organisation. And we're dedicated to supporting and facilitating personal and professional development for girls and women. So we like to start early and prepare girls for the world of work and some of the challenges that the world might throw at us. I'm also a leadership coach at University College Birmingham as well. And today, I'm going to be talking to you about imposter syndrome. So what that is, how that shows up for us, and hopefully you'll be leaving here with some tools around how to manage if that is something that you feel you encounter within your career. Now, I know we've all just got back from break and we've just got seated, but can I ask you all to stand for me, please? Thank you very much. So I'm going to read out 3 statements, and if you feel you are able to identify with these statements or they relate to you in some way or another, then you can take a seat. It's not a test. There is no right or wrong answers. Okay. So the first one being, have you ever walked into a room that you've been invited in? So perhaps the workplace, a boardroom, a meeting, a research project, and sat there and thought, I don't belong here. Everybody else is way more qualified than me. Everybody else knows more, and they're going to find out that actually they've invited the wrong person. So if you feel that's you or has been you in any instance, then please do take a seat. Wow, should have started with a different question, but brilliant. Thank you all so much for participating. So secondly, have you been given feedback? So perhaps recognition, praise, encouragement, reward for something that you've worked really hard at doing and it's been successful. But you've not been able to receive that feedback. You've not been able to receive the praise. Perhaps you've played it down a little bit, played down your accolades and achievements and said, oh, no, that was just something that I do. So if you feel that you can relate to that, then please take a seat. And then finally, has the fear of failure or the fear of something not working out, the fear of unknown, stopped you from trying something new altogether? If that you can relate to that, then please do take a seat. Wonderful. And don't worry if you didn't take a seat. As I said, there's no right or wrong, but you can take a seat now. So thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for participating in that. Now, you're not alone, because imposter syndrome will impact 70% of all of us at some point in our careers. It is very common among high achievers, so you're in good company. And it's very much a spectrum in terms of how much it can have an impact on you, and how much it might impact your career, your personal development, and also your professional development as well. And it really is a spectrum, because 3 out of 10 of us may experience crippling symptoms of imposter syndrome. And when we talk about crippling, I'm referring to impacting your health, may start causing symptoms of anxiety and depression. And in those instances, you may want to seek medical or therapeutic intervention. We're not here to have a therapy session. I'm not a therapist, but it's just some advice. So what is imposter syndrome in its form? So just some examples there of statements that I read out is, you know, how we can all experience imposter syndrome in lots of different ways. You may have heard of it as one of these terms here. So it's also known as imposter phenomenon, imposter belief, fraud feeling, fraud syndrome, and lots of other things that you may have come across. And it's a massive field of work that people are looking at within the personal development space, and also how it impacts women, men, people of different socio-economic status, minorities, racial, ethnic background, and how that manifests itself. So it was first coined by Pauline Rose Clance and Suzanne Imes in the 1970s, when they were looking at how it particularly impacts women. And they are within the psychology field, and they were doing lots of research, lots of studies, talking to lots of women, which they classed as intellectuals and academics, and thinking about how that impacts, but also where it comes from. What is the belief of yourself what do you believe about yourself that when you are in a room, you don't feel you belong? Where does that come from? Clance then went on to, and she still does a lot of work in that area. She went to write a book called The Imposter Phenomenon, When Success Makes You Feel Like a Fake. So essentially, the more successful we become, the more perhaps credits we receive next to our names, and the more rooms that we're invited in, the more we tend to feel inadequate. And as we move through today, I really invite you to move away from inadequacy and move into audacity, knocking on doors and making those bold, brave moves within your careers and professional development that you might be avoiding. I'm going to read just a short extract from a paper by Clance and Imes, which talks a little bit more about their project and what imposter syndrome is and how it's affected the 150 women that they've worked with. So in the past 5 years, we've worked in individual psychotherapy themed centres, international groups and college classes with over 150 highly successful women. Women who have earned PhDs in various specialities, who are respected professionals in their fields, or who are students recognised for their academic excellence. However, despite their earned degrees, scholastic honours, high achievement, and standardised tests, praise and professional recognition from colleagues and respected authorities, these women do not experience an internal sense of success. And that's where the problem lies, where internally we start to feel we are not good enough, because that's what stops our career trajectory, and that's what stops us from knocking on those doors. It does go on to add, because at some point it was, this is only something that affects women. It does affect men as well, but as a lower frequency. So that is from one of their papers. So what I'd like you to do is to turn to the person next to you, behind you, in front of you, and I'd like you to share a moment of when you have experienced the imposter syndrome. So the majority of you sat down. So when was that? What was it? Was it in a meeting? Was it applying for a job? Was it when you graduated? So I'm just going to give you a few minutes to share your experience with the people sat around you.
Hi.
Thank you all so much. If you just want to wrap up your conversations. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Does anybody feel like sharing? There is no pressure, but if you would like to. Thank you for sharing with each other, and it's not easy talking about. Yes, go for it.
Sure. I went to a conference back in Germany. It was the first time for me to go out. And it was a parallel session. I was in Macro. And I was in that room with 3 speakers and all the audience. I was the only girl. And the first thought in my head was like, I shouldn't be here, is it? But then I think it went out okay, but that was the moment I feel like it's not very pleasant, and I wonder why. But it's sort of this the moment I realized I have this kind of syndrome, and I think I'm not really qualified, or I really should put myself. I don't think I should be here, but here I am. So it's very interesting. But yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing. And just as you're sharing, I can see lots of people nodding, you know, being in that space. So thank you so much. Yeah. Hi.
I have this last week.
Okay.
I got nominated. I'm a foreign master student, and I got nominated for Transforming Education Awards at my university. And last week it was about 360 nominations, and then I came as one of the top 3 nominees in my category. I got there. I was invited for the award ceremony. I got there. I was the only person in my same town.
Okay.
I felt like living there. I didn't have any single to talk to until after I met some people my school. And then when I sat down there, I mean, I have a professor speak to me, oh, you've done so well. Did you prepare for the award if you get to win? I was like, oh no, I don't think I will win. And when I sat down there, I thought like, it's a privilege to be here, so I don't even like it. But to my surprise, I won the award. It was just a very good moment for me to realize that the fact that I was not I couldn't find anybody in my skin color like what I've done was actually being seen and recognized by the university. So that was actually like scenario I had that feeling.
Fantastic. Well, first of all, congratulations. And thank you so much for sharing. And I think one of the similarities with both of your stories is I'm the only one in that room. So the only female or the only person of your skin colour in that room. And it's really interesting what you also said there was, it doesn't matter if I don't win, it's just a privilege to be in the room. And it's a way of playing small. I deserve to win and I want to win, and you did win. So thank you for sharing some of those stories. And from day to day, this will impact us in different ways. It may or may not, but here are just some traits of an individual that may be experiencing imposter syndrome. So overworked, feeling that you have to prove a point because you are high achieving or you have worked hard to get there. So now you need to stay there. So you're going to work every hour God sends, and that is ultimately going to impact your health and also your work-life balance, personal life and all of those kinds of things. Having a fear of failure, lacking confidence in areas, not accepting compliments, decision paralysis, which can, lead to stagnation, in terms of if we don't make a decision and we stay still, that can be more harmful than making a decision that perhaps wasn't the correct one at the time, because we can always pivot from that. Avoidance, so avoiding difficult conversations, avoiding difficult moments or challenges that might be ahead of you. You might have an intense attention to detail resulting in perfectionism, and there's no such thing as perfect, but what it will do is slow you down. And the impact of that is having trouble sleeping, which can lead to stress and burnout. Now, we use the term stress quite often, if you've had a busy week, but when we're talking about stress and burnout, we're talking about, the fuel's on empty, the battery's on 0, there's nothing left, you're not able to, function as you would normally function. And it can lead to health implications. And one of the things about burnout and health implications here is how it impacts your autoimmune system. So when we suppress ourselves, our needs, what we want to voice for ourselves, it can have an impact on our autoimmune systems. And there's two thought leaders and incredible people out there doing a lot of work around that. So Dr. Gabor Mate and Dr. Martha Beck, who talk about it both on a personal level and on a professional level, how that can happen. But interestingly, women have a higher diagnosis rate of autoimmune diseases as well. So again, it's how are you managing this imposter voice in your head telling you can't do this, you shouldn't be here, they're going to find out, you're not good enough, because that's exhausting. You know, that really creates that sort of internal war, and it's not sustainable to continue at that rate, particularly when we're out here trying to make an impact in our businesses, in our fields and in our industries and communities with the wonderful work that you're all doing as well. And then there's some additional ones there around being anxious, overwhelmed and procrastinating too, which can lead to the exhaustion cycle. So we're in a constant state of worry. What if, what if, what if? So then we work really hard to compensate for that. Okay, so we are working 12 hours a day. We're still trying to maintain the other hats and roles that we might hold outside of our industries. And you're working really hard to cover that up. And then you get the successful result that you want. But you're not able to internalize the success because you don't deserve it, or so you tell yourself. Quite often those that experience imposter syndrome will think that it's luck, it's a fluke, somebody else helped you do it. And yes, we all need people to help us throughout our careers, whether it might be an introduction or opening a door. But that doesn't take away from your worth and your value and what you have to add to your industries, and becoming leaders within that industry as well. So then we seek external approval, and then we're right back at the constant worry. So how are we going to manage this? What are we going to do to manage some of these thoughts? So you've just shared some of your experiences as to when you felt imposter syndrome previously. But what I'd like you to do now is go back to the people that you were talking to and to share what you do right now to manage those moments. So what do you do at the awards ceremony? What do you do when you walk into a conference and you feel like you shouldn't be there? How do you currently deal with those? And I'll give you a few minutes to share some ideas. Thank you, everyone. I'm really pleased that there's some really great conversations going on, because one of the best ways to deal with imposter syndrome is to talk about it, is to come into communities, to share it with your colleagues, trusted peers and mentors, because it certainly isn't just you. And sometimes, as I said, when we can get into our heads about it, it's not helpful. But when we can share best practice and share how we can deal with it, it really makes the journey a little bit less lonely. And we're not supposed to do everything on our own. You know, we're not supposed to get from A to B into the top of the career ladder on our own. You know, it is about, you know, helping people up and also pulling people forward as well. So some really great conversations. And one of the recommended tools that you can use to support with managing imposter syndrome as a daily practice is journaling. So some of you may do that already. Journaling is great with providing clarity, providing some logic behind our thoughts, but also externalizing what is really an internal process that's taken place, and then trying to look for evidence in that. So I'm just going to give you 3 journal prompts that may help you to kind of go away and reflect after this session about where the imposter feeling comes from you. And again, there is no black and white or right answer or wrong answer to this. So number 1, where does that expectation of having to be high achieving come from? Where has that expectation come from? Is it from you? Have you placed it on yourself? Is it from society? We were just in the break talking about the pressures of what social media shows. Is it from upbringing? Is it from friends? Is it from the industry? So where has that expectation come from? What's the trigger for your imposter? So where is it that you feel inadequate the most? And be really detailed with that. So where are you? What are you doing? Who are you with? Because that might identify where that internal work needs to take place. And then finally, what is your self-perception? How do you perceive yourself? Because a real big thing within imposter syndrome is, I haven't really done this. You've tricked yourself into getting to where you are. You haven't actually gone to university and done all these degrees and masters and gone on these graduate programs. And it's that sense of the fraud feeling. So what is that perception of yourself? And we'll talk a little bit more around journaling and how that can support you. But hopefully there's some 3 prompts that you can take away and work on. So how might this directly impact your career? So difficulty embracing achievements. Now, why this is such an issue, and I think Rupal talked about it at the end of the Q&A, nobody else is going to advocate for you like you're going to advocate for yourself. So when you get the nominations, when you get the promotions, when you get the recognition for your work, talk about it, share it with your peers, because that's what increases your profile within your businesses and within your industry and attending events like this. So you need to embrace it and you need to talk about it. It's incredibly important. If you are consistently feeling overworked and you haven't got that work-life balance, whilst we start off being high achieving and high performing, the sustainability of that will eventually have a decline in performance because your productivity is going to decline and so is the quality of your work, especially if you're feeling burnt out and tired. So it's really counterintuitive. You may avoid promotions and opportunities. So all of you that walked in through the doors today would have had mixed feelings, whether it was nervous, excited, looking forward to it. Do I approach this person to say good morning to them, or do I stand in the corner and have a tea on my phone? Okay, this thought process will have gone through many of our minds before we came in. When I got the email to be here, oh, why do they want me there? And that's when I needed to respond and say, I'll be there. Because when something scares you and you don't feel ready for it, that's when you absolutely have to do it. It's a mandate. You've got to do it because the mountain just gets bigger. So go for the promotions, go for the opportunities. And there was a study done by the Government Equalities Office in 22 by the Behaviour Insight team, which looked at the different behaviours between men and women who apply for jobs. So if men meet 52% of the criteria, they'll go for it. But women will need 60 to 70% match before they apply for a job. Okay, again, there's never going to be 100% fit. We can learn. That's how we've got to where we are. We are valued, there is worth, and you have a lot to add to the rooms and the conversations that you're in. So go for the opportunities. Nothing's ever 100% fit. I like to go by the 51% rule, which I heard on the Diary of a CEO, again, talking about that at break time. If 51% of you, I mean, we're talking about informed, safe risks here. So if 51% of you is telling you you should go for something or not go for something, then listen to it. That's more than it was before. So there is no such thing as waiting for the 100% fit. So how do we climb the mountain of imposter? We've talked about journaling, but first of all, that self-perception is really important. What you think about yourself matters. So get really clear on your strengths. Treat it like you're taking yourself to a job interview, okay? In that journal, write down every single thing that you are good at doing, every single thing that interests you, every single thing that you've ever been, recognised for. Go back as far as you need to in your career, but write down those strengths and get clear on them, because that will be your foundation when you feel the imposter start rocking. Focus on the facts. So when you're sitting in that room and you say everybody's more qualified than me, the question that need to ask yourself is, where is the evidence? Because you don't have it. You haven't seen everybody's CV, you haven't seen everybody's career history. So where is the evidence? Now, you've probably heard that saying, if you're looking for a red car hard enough, you'll find 100 of them as you're walking from point A to B. So if you're looking for negative, you will find it. And if you look for the positive, you'll also find it. So it's really important that you fact check your own thoughts, because they're not always facts. Challenge the negative self-talk. So for every negative statement you say about yourself or your skill set or the opportunity, you need to replace it with 3 positives. Now, the idea behind that is to rewire the neuroplasticity in our brains that has been telling us we're not good enough. And it takes a while, because we're falling into habits, and habits take time to break out of. So by replacing the 1 negative with 3 positives over time, the positives will become the default. Keep a success journal. So every single time you've done something well, write it down. Put it in your phone, put it on your notes, or put it in a book, wherever. Just make sure you write it down, because you can keep coming back to that every time you're about to start something new. And instead of starting that journey with, I don't think I can do this, let's rephrase our language to, how can I do this? Okay. And then finally, as we've mentioned, it's important to talk about it. Talk about it, get a mentor, get a coach, networks like this, and share your experiences, because it will help somebody else when you share your journey, and you'll always be able to take something from theirs as well. So just to finish off, what I'd like you to do is, in your notebooks or your electronic notebooks, whatever you're using, is to write down 3 things that you are incredibly proud of, that you alone have achieved. And you cannot start that sentence with we. Okay, it has to be I. So 3 things that you've achieved. So we can leave here, well, finish this workshop, having started your success journal. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that, and then we'll be finishing off. For those of you that have done that, there is a QR code on the screen. This takes you to the Pauline Rose-Clance website, who founded the work around imposter syndrome. And it's just a link that you can save for later. It's a PDF document, and it's a self-assessment around imposter syndrome and where you feel you are. And it's just a bit of feedback, which isn't always factual as well. So it's just a little self-assessment to consider where you might be on that scale with imposter syndrome. And finally, while I take questions, if anybody has any questions, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave me some feedback using the QR code. Having worked in training and coaching and wellbeing for so many years in lots of different settings, I'm so incredibly passionate about women taking up space in their field, whatever field that is, and not playing small, and really using their voice to be exactly who they want to be and do exactly what they want to do. We have so much worth and so much value that when we do come out to, speak and use our voice, it can often be seen as overpowering or overconfident or aggressive. And if that's the case, then great, because actually you doing that gives other women the permission to do that as well. So as I said at the beginning, let's be audacious. Let's have endless audacity to do exactly what we want to do. So please do leave some feedback. I've also put my email address and website there if you want to know a little bit more about anything that we do. around coaching or wellbeing or training. But does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Thank you for the session. So I have two questions actually.
Okay.
So I'm a recent graduate. So how to have the motivation and less procrastination while especially while having the job applications and just after the graduation and getting into the post grad life. So that's one thing. And another thing is how to fight imposter syndrome, when people around you are having negative talks, for example, saying things like you're not qualified enough for this or something like that. So how to fight that? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll start with the second question first. So I think the company that you keep is incredibly important. And my honest advice would be, if people are speaking that over you and into you, is to find a new crowd to be around. Because life's hard, so we need to be around a community that is going to uplift us and speak life into us and over us. Particularly when you're starting out in your career, it's really, really challenging and hard. But also, it might be about having that courageous conversation with whoever it is, you know, friends, family, colleagues that are saying you can't do it. And letting them know how it impacts you. You will sometimes, when we're sending out applications, particularly when we're at the very early stages of our career, we want somebody that's more qualified, and it's that chicken and egg situation. Well, I'm applying because I want the experience. So in those cases, I think it might be seeking out mentors and seeking out professionals in the industry and asking, you know, would you be able to guide me into gaining more experience in a specific area, or would you mind if I was to shadow you at a conference or a meeting to build up your skills and confidence in that area? And can you just remind me what question one is again, please?
I just graduated, so the transition from the university life to the job market and post-student life.
Yeah. Well, that's a hard one because it was a long time ago for me, and it wasn't one that I wanted to let go of, going from student to working full time. But I think it's giving yourself grace and compassion to understand and learn where it is and what it is you want. And you don't have to have all the answers. You know, my background, I went to university and did dance and theatre. I don't do any dance or theatre now, really. And so I think it's about giving yourself grace, compassion, try new things, you know, step outside of your comfort zone as well, because that's where you learn the things that you like and the things that aren't quite for you. Okay. I mean, I could talk about that for 2 hours, but I don't have 2 hours, so.
Hello, my name is Vivian Geard. I'm from EY. One of your slides struck me. It was the one where you showed some of the effects that kind of suffering imposter syndrome can have. And looking at that list, I thought those are actually also some of the effects of women going through a certain cycle later on in life, the menopause, which makes me kind of wonder whether you have any kind of reflections or comments on kind of a woman kind of going through that period of life. So I'll just add a couple other comments, because the thing that struck me as well is, so increasingly we're seeing women in more senior positions, older women as well in higher profile positions, also where they're kind of a lot of older women, when they are going through later cycle in life, they actually leave the workplace.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's a result of these similar kinds of effects. Are they going through, having risen, achieved success in their careers? Are they going through another or second phase of imposter syndrome-like feelings?
Yeah.
Anyway, any comments or reflections on that would be great.
I think that we're in a space where people talk about menopause a little bit more in the workplace and having policies in place and having those discussions around it, from a HR perspective and within the workplace. But I think it's really important that if you feel something, and I think this can happen quite often, particularly if we're talking to peers or if you go to the GP and I feel like this, and we're very quick to diagnose, but actually you may know your symptoms better than the GP or somebody that you're talking to. So I think knowing where you are at with it and knowing your own experiences and symptoms is really important. And yes, there are similar to you know, quite often women are being diagnosed with depression when it's perimenopause. So there are lots of similar traits, and I think it's knowing yourself and standing firm on, no, actually this is where I am, and this is what I am experiencing. And a lot of the work that we do is having conversations with workplaces about being more equitable at the different seasons of a woman's life, whether it's menopause or maternity, you know, and what that does for their finances, for their health and well-being, and all of those kinds of areas. So yes, I think that it's complicated, it's grey, and I think understanding your stance is really important to then be able to communicate it either to your employer or health experts.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for the session. So I have one question. I know you spoke about one of the strategies to overcoming imposter syndrome, to talk about it. And then you also mentioned about the fact that we should advocate for ourselves. No one else can advocate for you more than you can do for yourself. For this last one, my question is this: how can we advocate for ourselves without feeling that we're being too much? And how do you also draw the line between humility and self-doubt?
What was the last bit? Draw the line between?
Humility,
yeah,
and self-doubt.
Okay. So I don't think we can ever be too much. You know, yes, if you go in with pom-poms and shit and you know, you're kind of sort of self-indulgent. But if you've worked hard for something and you have earned it, you know, why not share it? We live in a world where we're told, you know, I'm not going to blow my own trumpet. Well, I'm here to tell you, blow it, you know. And even things like putting something on LinkedIn. You know, how many of you second guess, triple guess before you post something on LinkedIn? Whether it's a thought or, you know, a conversation or you know, something that you've achieved. And that's a part of worrying what people think about you. And that also feeds into imposter syndrome. So I think, you know, if as long as you're being authentic and true to who you are, I don't think you could ever be too much. And I think secondly, having a community is really important, and joining networks. And if you are going to talk about it and if you are going to share, is to, you know, make sure that it's with trusted people. Have we got time for one or two more questions?
Hi, I think it's great backing on undoing some of these feelings around imposter syndrome. But I wonder whether you have any views on what creates them and whether there's anything we can do to stop it from happening in future generations.
Yes, absolutely. So our environment, and the paper that I actually read from there is available in the Psychotherapy Journal, volume 15. They go on to talk about it has a lot to do with how we are brought up. So there's a lot to unpack there, but you know, our upbringing, society has a lot to do with it, and you know, the generation in which we would have grown up. Social media will play a large part of it, our socioeconomic status, our gender, our race, our faith, all of those things impact how we might view ourselves, because there's cultural nuances as well, in terms of what might be deemed acceptable in one area and not in another. So I think it's starting off really young. And a key thing it talks about is the stereotypes that are placed on women from a very young age. So I think it's challenging those as well. I think this is the last question.
Sounds
Thank you.
no pressure. I was wondering how, so from the other perspective, thinking of a manager, let's say, that leads a team, and then you have people. So I think like what you showed in terms of the impact, you can see that, and you know, and people in your team, that they might be stressed, they might be perfectionist. So in academia, I think we all are to some extent like that. That really spoke to me, not only women, I think everyone. So how do you then, from a more senior position, a manager, try to, because like giving positive feedback all the time is also very tiring.
Yeah.
So how do you help others thrive in your team if they have this imposter syndrome? So any kind of practical tips?
I think that implementing mentors within the business is really important. So having senior members of the team that individuals can go and speak to. I think positive feedback is also important as and when valid and you know, timely needed. I think having meaningful appraisals and one-to-ones where the question around well-being is on there as well. And you know, from promoting personal and professional development. So let's put together a development plan. Where do you want your career to go? How can I help you do that? And that's when some of these conversations might come out, because it's very rare somebody walks into the workplace and says, I've got imposter syndrome. So having meaningful conversations and ensuring that that's part of your people strategy is really important. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Dee.
you.
Yes, I really have to thank you, Dee, for that very interesting and empowering talk. And I think we all take away a lot of tangible tools to work with, the power of networking and belonging to a network. This is why we created UK WEN. And related to your question, you know, it's about empowering ourselves, then change those stereotypes, right? So we build from bottom up, but also top down. So we need to work against, you know, the stereotypes that create those imposter syndrome in the first place. And we also need to help ourselves to realize of the imposter syndrome. So this is why we're here today. So thanks a lot.